Hey everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a recent reads wrap-up and upcoming TBR. So I have been physically reading very slowly over these past couple months. So I actually have books that I finished like 2 months ago to wrap up for you all. So it's been a while since I've read some of these books. So I apologize if my thoughts are no longer super fresh and coherent. I always go in the order of my enjoyment for these wrap-ups. So we'll start with the book that I liked the least and work my way up to the book I liked the most. But before we get into talking about the books, I really need to thank Tribesigns for so kindly sending me one of their gorgeous pieces of furniture. If you've never heard of Tribesigns before, Tribesigns is a growing brand in the home products and creative community, and some of their most popular products include bookshelves, organizers, desks, etc. So when I went on and saw the amazing pieces that they had, I was so excited. I was so excited to work with them. If I hadn't already gotten my library built by my dad, I probably would have bought one of their bookshelves because their bookshelves are amazing. When I tell you all that you need to go on and look at some of their bookshelves, I'm not even kidding. I'm showing them right here, hopefully. Gorgeous. I decided to select their shoe organizer. It was something that I really needed in that specific part of the house, and I loved the look of this one. I thought it was gorgeous and it really matches the rest of our house very well. I love how easy it was to set up. The instructions were very straightforward and we were able to set it up in just a couple hours. There's so much space. It's a perfect fit in the room, and as you can see, it has this really nice push feature. So if you push on the doors, that's what opens them up, and then you see all of the hidden shoes. That was something I really wanted with my shoe organizer, was hiding the shoes when you're not actually using them. They just have really great stuff, and it's all extremely reasonably priced. I will link all of the information for them down below, and they are having a huge sale today and tomorrow. So if you go onto their website, you can check out some of those sale prices right now, and you can also use my code Jessie to get 10% off of all products on tribesigns.com. Thank you, Tribesigns, so much for sending me the gorgeous piece of furniture, and now we will get to talking about the books. So starting with the book I liked the least, and I've had such a good reading time these past couple months. I don't have any books that are less than 4 stars on this wrap up, and I have no DNFs. Who is she? I don't know. So it's really hard to select which book I liked the least. The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren, even though this one is going first, I still really enjoyed it. I still gave it 4 stars. It was still adorable. It's just, of all of the books that I read, I guess this is the one I liked the least, but it was still so good. So this is following a character who, she is a famous romance author, but she's in a slump because she has been having trouble finding a real life romance. And she gets the opportunity to be the main character, not really character, she gets to be the main person on this reality dating show. It's kind of like The Bachelor, but the twist is, instead of her selecting each week who she's going to send home, it's actually the audience watching that gets to select who continues on in the show for her. So they're watching along, they're voting on who they think she has the most chemistry with, or who they think is the best fit for her. And the other fun thing about this show is each guy fits a specific romance trope. So you have like the cute cinnamon roll guy, you have like the hot nerd, you have like the super manly buff guy. It's so much fun, and while I was reading this, I wanted this show to be real so bad. I would totally watch it. It sounded like so much fun. I would say the only thing that kind of held me back from making this a 5-star favorite was the romance that you're focusing on isn't what you'd expect it would be. And it's not that that bothered me, but I do wish we had leaned a little bit more into the dating show. The romance that's established early on kind of detracts a little bit from what she's doing on the show. And so that kind of took away a little bit of the fun. And I wish that romance had blossomed maybe a little bit later in the book, or I don't know. I wanted more of the show because the show was so much fun. So I think that that would be like my only complaint and why this wasn't like a 5-star favorite, but it was still so much fun. I loved the characters. I loved the whole concept of it. It was just a really good time. The next one I have to talk about is the one I actually just finished most recently, just a couple days ago, and it is The Shadows by Alex North, which I finally read. This has been on my TBR since finishing The Whisper Man several years ago, so it was about time. It was about time that I finally read it, and I waited until spooky season to do so. I'm very glad I waited until spooky season. It was a great spooky time read. This is an adult thriller / horror book following a character who, in the past, when he was a kid growing up, he lived in a small town. He was friends with this kind of sketchy other kid who had some like weird obsession with like lucid dreaming, and a murder happens in the past, and so the main character is now an adult in the future timeline, in the current timeline, and he is coming back to this small town where all of this took place because his mother is now sick, and he realizes that he may be in more danger than he anticipated based on what happened in the past. And I really liked this one. I was super into it the entire time. I couldn't stop reading it. I really, really like Alex North's writing style. I really like the way he does characters and character relationships. I always feel invested in the main characters, and I really like his brand of kind of like detective mystery with a bit of horror sprinkled in. So I really like his books, and I'm going to continue reading his books. I think for me with this one, the ending left a little bit to be desired, where I had to go back and reread things and see if I had missed like a big reveal, because there were things that weren't totally answered or weren't answered to an extent that you'd expect them to be. So you have to kind of be okay with some things not being totally answered clearly or fully resolved at the end of this book, which was a little bit of a bummer. Now, there is a really fun twist in this book that I did not see coming at all. You kind of have assumptions as you're reading this entire book, and they're totally turned on their head. Oh my gosh, that twist totally got me, but I was just a little disappointed that we maybe didn't get all the answers I was expecting to, and it left a little to be desired, unfortunately. Still on my 4-star reads, the next 4-star book I have is The Final Strife by Sarah L. Arifi. This was my book club pick for last month, and I really enjoyed this one. This book follows a character who lives in a society that is kind of ruled by different classes of blood. So you have people who have red blood, you have clear blood, blue blood. So depending on the color of your blood, that kind of dictates what class of people you belong to. And you're following a character who was switched at birth. She was born a red blood, which is like the highest blood in this society, the highest ranking member of society. She was born a red blood, but she was switched at birth and was trained her whole life to become a soldier in this blue blood army. And so she is kind of like this spy who is meant to upend the whole hierarchy of this empire and kind of break it from the inside. And so I really liked the concept in this one. There is another main character who kind of took her place and is a blue blood in a kind of red blood position, and that was a really interesting dynamic to follow. What I'm going to say about this one is why it wasn't an all-time favorite for me. I think just some of the characters felt a little bit immature. This at times did read quite young, which was kind of strange. It was a strange place to be because it at times read very young with some of the dialogue between characters, but then like the horrific acts that were happening were like very violent. It's a very, very dark and disturbing world, and really bad stuff is happening, and it's exploring some pretty interesting themes, but then you'd have characters who kind of acted like they belonged in a young adult book. So it had an interesting tone throughout that was a little bit jarring at times. At the end of the day, that didn't bother me too much because I actually found it really nicely paced. I liked the pacing of this one, and I actually sometimes like that it leaned a little bit more kind of in a new adult space, if you will. If there was a target audience between young adult and adult, in that like new adult, then it would be there, because I really liked the pacing. I liked some of the tropes that were being played with in this one and some of the relationships that were developed, but some of the tone at times was a little jarring. And then I also just think there is a love triangle, which is never anyone's favorite, and it wasn't the best executed love triangle. I didn't love it, and I kind of wish there were just more friendships in fantasy books, because sometimes not everything has to be a romance. So I don't know, like some of the relationships in this one I really liked, some of them weren't my favorite. So I liked a lot about this book. I'm definitely continuing on with the series. I really liked where it ended. There is a huge twist at the end of this book that I did not see coming at all. No one in my book club saw it coming. It was awesome the way it ended. So I'm very intrigued to continue on and see how this world kind of expands. But it was just some of the stuff I didn't love. It also has like a very much like a competition aspect to it, where you have a lot of trials that the characters are going through, and some of the trials were really fun to follow, and then some of them were like a little lackluster. So it was just kind of like uneven at times, but overall I still really enjoyed my time with it. Last 4-star I have, and then we'll get into my 5 stars, was Jade City by Fonda Lee. This was my book club pick for last month. Oh my gosh, we're in October. The Final Strife was actually for August, and this one was for September. So you can see how long I've been meaning to do this recent reads wrap up. My goodness. Okay, so Jade City, I'd read this before, so I knew that I was gonna like it, and I did. I did really enjoy my time rereading this book. I had not remembered so much of it, so it was basically like reading it for the first time all over again. I kept the same rating that I had the first time I read it. So I originally gave it 4 stars. I kept my 4-star rating this time around. I love Fonda Lee's ability to make such an authentic feeling world that feels so well realized and feels like a real place. It's unbelievable. The amount of world building that she does in this book it's incredible. So I love that aspect of the story. I also love mafia politics. That part of the book felt very Peaky Blinders to me. And then the family drama part of the book felt very Succession to me. So if you've watched either of those shows, it kind of in a way, this is like a fantasy equivalent of those shows in a weird way. What keeps it from being a 5-star is really hard to pinpoint, because I love some of these characters so much, like Andon. I love Andon so much, and I love what happens. Kind of, there's a big plot twist, and it's such a risk that I think pays off. But there are just some characters that I don't love as much. I don't love Hilo, even though I really understand him. There's something holding this back from being a 5-star for me, and I think at the end of the day, it just has to come down to, at times it's very slowly paced, and at times it's a little bit tedious. Again, it's really hard to pinpoint. I love so much of what this book is and what it's doing. I can't wait to continue on in the series. I'm for sure continuing on, but it's not an all-time favorite for me quite yet, and maybe it will become that. And I think like the stakes are already so high, but yeah, there's like something missing for me, and it's very hard to pinpoint. I don't know. Do you have books like that where you're like, I really should love it? The way I'm talking about it, you would think it's like 5-star, but there's just like something that you can't put your finger on. I don't know. Now let's get to my 2 5-star books. The Diviners by Libba Bray, which is shocking. I was not expecting to give this book 5 stars. This is a YA paranormal fantasy. I am not a huge urban fantasy fan. I'm not a huge paranormal fantasy fan. I'm not a huge YA fantasy fan anymore. I loved this. I loved it. This was so much fun. And I think why I loved it so much was because it was so much creepier than I was expecting it to be. This was really scary. Like, this was like genuinely very creepy at times. And it felt a lot darker than I was expecting it to be. At times I was like, is Libba Bray really gonna, is she gonna like go there? And then she did. And I was like, good for you. That was awesome. So I don't know. For me, this is one that I can see why it's young adult. It's classified as young adult and it's for that age range, but it's definitely for like the upper part of that age range. And it's scary. This is a perfect October read. If you're looking for a spooky book to read, my goodness, I haven't even told you what it's about. You're following a character who moves to New York City. She realizes that she has these powers where if she holds something that belongs to someone, she can kind of see that object's past and kind of see like secrets about that person that owns that object. So it's a very powerful ability that she has, and she realizes that she is a part of this group called the Diviners that have these kind of supernatural, unexplainable abilities. The main kind of plot line of the book is you have these mysterious murders that are happening in the city that all seem to be connected, are trying to figure out alongside your main character and the crew that she recruits to her cause, who done it, who is behind these murders. And it's like a really scary answer. It's pretty scary. At times it very much reminded me of like Stranger Things in terms of the level of horror. So if you are not bothered by the level of horror in Stranger Things, I don't think the level of horror in this one will bother you. Vice versa, if you are bothered by that level of horror, proceed with caution. The other thing I really liked was all the characters. This is definitely a multi-POV story, and you have a much larger cast of characters than I was expecting to get, and I really enjoyed all of them. I think some of them were developed more than others, but at the end of the day, I really liked all of them, and I just really like Libba Bray's writing style. I think she did a fantastic job of making this 1920s era of New York City really come to life, and it was just really fun to be transported like back in time almost with these characters. So I enjoyed every second of this. I listened to the audiobook for it, and I cannot recommend the audiobook enough. January Lavoie is the narrator, and she is phenomenal. The voices that she does, the creepy stuff that she does, oh my gosh, it's so good. And the singing that she does, so good. So I loved my experience reading The Diviners. I can't wait to continue on with the series because it was the biggest surprise for me. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. And then the last book I have to talk about, my favorite book from this wrap up, is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. I feel like this is kind of an unpopular opinion because I've seen a lot of not great reviews for The Lost Metal, and I loved it. So I guess I can see why others wouldn't love this. It is very Cosmere heavy. I highly recommend reading quite a bit of Cosmere related works before you get into The Lost Metal, particularly Elantris and Emperor's Soul, I think are pretty important before reading The Lost Metal. Also, if you haven't read Mistborn Secret History, absolutely read Mistborn Secret History before you read The Lost Metal. So I think that there's a lot of prerequisite reading you have to do in order to get the full experience of The Lost Metal. That being said, if you don't read any of those books, you can absolutely still follow what's going on. It's not required reading, but I think it enhances your experience if you can find some of the Easter eggs throughout the book that are from a lot of those other books. So with Mistborn Era 2, this was an interesting one for me because I read it years ago, the first 3 books, and I didn't love it. I gave every book 3 stars: Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, Bands of Mourning. Now, upon reread, before I read The Lost Metal, I gave Alloy of Law 4 stars, Shadows of Self 5, and Bands of Mourning 4. And I think why I like my reread even more is because I can now, upon reflection, really appreciate that it's not trying to be Mistborn Era 1. I think coming fresh off of Mistborn Era 1 and not getting anything close to that, I was very disappointed. But I also just really loved the characters this second time around a lot more. Like, I love Wax and I love Steris, and even Marcy and Wayne, like, I loved everybody. I loved the whole gang. And I love their relationships with each other. They just had a really great dynamic with each other that I loved reading about. And I think in this book particularly, you really get to see a lot of those relationships kind of come to a head, and really big things happen and very emotional things happen. And it's just, it hit. It landed. Like, the emotional moments landed for me because I cared about these characters a lot, and I really loved following their story. And then I just love all the Cosmere stuff. I really like how Sanderson is connecting all of the Cosmere stories. I'm very intrigued by it. It was so much fun to go on after and read more about it and read more theories and read more behind the scenes and Easter eggs that I didn't even catch, all these things. It's just so much fun. It's bigger than just this one book, and it's become a whole experience around being a Cosmere fan. I finally get to enjoy being a whole Cosmere fan, not just a Mistborn fan or not just a Stormlight fan. So I think that this book really showed me that I love what's happening with the greater Cosmere. I love how we're starting to connect everything. I really liked that the stakes were so high in this one. I loved all of the references to Era 1. I loved how we continued on with a lot of those stories, and I loved everything. I really did. I loved my time reading Era 2. So yeah, I get it if people don't love it. If you don't love how the Cosmere is getting all connected, I get it. But for me, I'm loving it. I'm just having a great time. So those are all of the books that I managed to finish in the past couple of months since my last recent reads wrap up. So let's talk about the 5 books that I plan on reading next. First one is, of course, my book club book for this month, and that is The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. This is a fantasy horror book. I have started this one. I am about 100 pages in, and it is so weird. This is so weird. What a strange book. I have no idea what this is about. I have no idea what's going on. I'm 100 pages in and I'm like, what am I reading? But in the best possible way. It's so weird, but I'm here for it. So I don't know. I'll report back to you after I finish this one because I don't even know how to describe it to you right now. So weird. The next one that I've started is Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray. I went ahead and just started this audiobook right after I finished The Diviners because I just love the audiobooks, and it was available, and I'm excited to continue on. I'm loving it. I'm less than halfway. It is a really long book. How many pages is this? Because the audiobook is 20 hours long, which is extremely long. This is over 600 pages long. I'm so far feeling like it doesn't have to be that long. That's a little excessive, but it's still enjoyable. I'm still enjoying it. So that one is in progress. I also just started Firestarter by Stephen King. This is one of the spooky books for October that I really want to get to. I am just trying to make my way through all of Stephen King's backlist of books, and this was the next on the list. And I have been told by many people to watch the original adaptation with Drew Barrymore as the child Charlie in the book. If you don't know, Charlie is the child in this book, and she can create fire, and people are after her for this ability. So very excited to continue my read with Firestarter. Then 2 books that just got bumped up way high on my TBR because of reasons. The first, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Griever's Blood by Alexander Darwin. I loved the combat codes so much. That book got 5 out of 5 stars for me. So unexpected. Loved every second. There's a full review of it that I can link down below for you if you want my full thoughts on it. So good. So when the author sent me the arc for the next book, I freaked out. I couldn't believe it. I was not expecting it. And I am just over the moon. So excited to read this book. So it jumped way up on my TBR, and it is now the next sequel that I want to read. So definitely gonna get to this one soon. Oh my gosh, so excited. And then finally, I just received this today. Was so excited, could not believe it. Oh my gosh, The Hurricane Wars by Tia Guanzon. So this one I feel is going to be quite popular. It is a romantasy following 2 people who are on opposite sides of a war that I think end up falling in love. So it's got like that forbidden love trope that I adore. I love that trope in books, and I think it's gonna be really good. It's getting really, really good early reviews, and it's getting a lot of hype. So I'm hopeful that I love it. I want to see what all the hype's about, and I'm so excited that it came in the mail. I couldn't believe it. So those are the 5 books that I am planning on reading next. So what is the last book that you absolutely loved? Let me know in the comments down below. And what are you planning on reading this spooky month of October? Let me know that as well. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!